They were already watching him the moment he stepped inside the store, eyes trailing him like shadows, suspicion hanging in the air so thick it could choke, the familiar kind of silence that follows a black man the moment he enters a high-end space not designed with him in mind, and yet Malik Johnson ignored it, not because he didn't notice but because he was used to it, the way people stared, clutched their bags, the subtle nudges security gave each other through their earpieces when someone who looked like him entered a boutique in downtown Portland, Oregon. Malik, 28, wore jeans and a fitted black hoodie with a worn backpack over his shoulder, and though he kept his hands visible and his movements calm, his very presence made the glass counter clerk stiffen and whisper toward the back. He didn't come here to make trouble. In fact, he'd only stepped in for one reason, to pick up a custom-ordered wristwatch, a limited edition royal blue Tag Heuer he'd worked all year to earn as a gift to himself for finally landing a contract that would change his entire future. What the store employees didn't know, what they couldn't imagine, was that Malik was no thief, no loiterer, and no stranger to the luxury world anymore. He was a newly signed UX developer for one of the fastest-growing tech startups on the West Coast, and the contract in his bag, worth $1.2 million over 4 years, was more than enough to buy every item in the store and still have change left for champagne, but they didn't ask, they just followed. The young white security guard flanking the cologne aisle made a fake cough to get his attention, then slowly tailed him toward the display case where the watch was supposed to be held. Malik gave a patient nod, kept his cool. "Hi," he said to the blonde woman at the front, her name tag reading Sierra, her lips pursed with tight discomfort. "I'm here to pick up an order, online pickup, for a Malik Johnson." Her eyes barely flicked toward the computer. "Do you have ID?" she asked, already skeptical, already preparing to call back up if anything seemed off. He handed her both his ID and the confirmation code, and even as she typed, her brows furrowed deeper. "This order looks expensive. Did you actually pay for it already?" That line hit Malik in the gut, not because it shocked him but because it was so predictable, so rehearsed. He nodded once. "Yes. Paid in full last Friday." Before she could say more, a second employee emerged from the back, tall, ginger-haired, with a name tag reading Chase, and a smug smirk that told Malik this wasn't going to end simply. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step back from the counter," Chase said, stepping between him and Sierra. "There seems to be an issue with the order." Malik, confused but calm, raised his hands slightly. "What kind of issue?" "I have the receipt, I got the confirmation text just now." But Chase wasn't listening. He was already signaling toward the security guard, who now approached fully, hand hovering near his belt, not on a weapon, but the implication was loud and clear. "We've had a problem with fraud lately," Chase added. "We'll need to verify this order wasn't stolen or tampered with." Malik blinked. "Excuse me? I'm going to need you to empty your bag and step outside while we contact the manager," Chase continued, ignoring Malik's growing irritation. "This is just protocol." The moment Malik opened his mouth to respond, the security guard stepped between them, now assertive. "Let's go, sir. Outside. You can't stay in here if there's a question of criminal activity." The words hit like spit in the face. Customers had begun to whisper. Someone had pulled out their phone. Malik clenched his fists at his sides, not because he wanted to fight, but because the weight of dignity slipping through his fingers was unbearable. He started to protest, voice steady but firm. "I didn't steal anything." "You're making a mistake." But Chase cut him off. "Look, if you didn't do anything, then you've got nothing to hide, right?" Malik was escorted, outside, now standing beneath the cold gray Oregon sky, heart pounding in his ears, feeling exposed and humiliated, the world watching a man wrongly accused as if this were all just a regular day. And then it happened. The door swung open again, but this time not with another guard, not with the police, but with an older man in a tailored charcoal suit, tall, black, and poised, his presence radiating authority and control. He had salt and pepper hair, and a voice that boomed with familiarity and calm. "Malik?" the man called, scanning the crowd. "Malik Johnson?" The security guard stiffened. Chase and Sierra looked confused. Malik nodded slowly. "Yes." The man's face broke into a warm, proud smile. He walked straight toward him and pulled him into a tight, deliberate hug. "Man, it's good to see you again. It's been 10 years since Yale." The crowd gasped. Chase's mouth dropped. Malik blinked, frozen. The man pulled back and clapped a hand on his shoulder, then turned toward the stunned staff. I'm Richard Belton, owner of this entire chain. Is there a problem here? The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Chase fumbled. Sierra looked like she'd seen a ghost. Richard didn't smile. His eyes were sharp now, slicing through the tension like a scalpel. Because if there is, he added, tone darkening, I want to know exactly what happened, who made the call, and what they assumed based on nothing but skin. Malik stood there, still reeling. A moment ago he was a suspect. Now he was embraced by the man who owned the very store that tried to humiliate him. But what happened next, what Malik didn't know, was that the encounter outside that boutique would go viral, would spark a national uproar and uncover something far more sinister than racial profiling. A systemic pattern of hidden surveillance, targeted flagging and internal company policies designed to disproportionately monitor black and brown customers. The hug may have ended, but Malik's battle was just beginning. And as the owner whispered in his ear, I need to talk to you about what's really going on, Malik felt the storm rise, and he wasn't about to back down. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift black voices and expose hidden truths. Malik discovers that this wasn't the first incident at this store, and that several young black customers had been secretly flagged and followed for months. The next move? Richard wants Malik to join him in exposing the rot from the inside, but someone else is watching, and they're ready to silence both men. The ride in Richard Belton's Tesla Model S was quiet for the first 5 minutes, the hum of the electric engine contrasting sharply with the static still burning in Malik's chest. His fists clenched tighter than he realized until Richard, glancing sideways as they pulled onto the expressway, calmly said, You can breathe now, Malik. You're not crazy. And just like that, Malik's entire composure cracked for the first time all day, not into tears but into questions, sharp-edged and spit out in bursts. Why did they treat me like that? What do you mean I'm not crazy? What the hell is going on in that store? Richard gave a knowing sigh, eyes on the road, but his tone turned weighty, like he'd been waiting years to say what was coming next. I opened that flagship location 7 years ago. It was supposed to be a beacon, black-owned, high-end, inclusive, a model for retail equity, he said slowly, fingers tightening on the wheel. But somewhere along the line, corporate security got outsourced, and things changed. Quietly. Malik frowned. Outsourced? To who? A firm called SafeCheck Solutions, Richard replied, glancing at him. They sold us AI-backed monitoring systems. Claimed to reduce theft without racial bias. That was the pitch. But the data told another story. Malik leaned forward. What kind of data? Richard tapped his dash screen, bringing up an internal report on the monitor. It was a security audit, color-coded charts, facial recognition logs, tag behavior entries, and Malik's blood went cold. Over the past 18 months, Richard explained, SafeCheck flagged over 78% of our surveillance alerts on black or Latino shoppers, regardless of what they were doing. No proof of theft, no complaints from staff, just behavioral markers. Malik scanned the screen, feeling his stomach drop. Behavioral markers like what? Richard turned toward him. Wearing hoodies, hands in pockets, walking slowly, coming in alone. Malik sat back, breath shallow. That's every black kid in America. Exactly, Richard said grimly. They turned our stores into traps. Malik was silent for a moment, then narrowed his eyes. So shut them down. Fire SafeCheck. Go public. Richard gave a humorless chuckle. It's not that simple. There's a clause in the security contract. A gag clause. I expose them, I breach terms. And they have legal clause in our other investments too. If I go loud without leverage, they ruin me. Malik stared, mind racing. So why me? Because they messed up, Richard said, eyes burning now. You were flagged just for being there. But you're not just some guy off the street. You're brilliant. Yeah. Tech background. A quiet voice people underestimate. You could walk into their system and understand it. Malik blinked. You want me to go undercover? I want you, Richard said carefully, to do what you do best, infiltrate the backend. I'll pull strings and get you hired at SafeCheck as a systems analyst. Your job? Find the proof. Data trails, access logs, facial ID training sets. Anything we can use to expose what they're doing before they bury it. They're cleaning house now because they know someone's asking questions. Malik stared at him, the offer electric in the air. That's dangerous. So is staying silent, Richard said softly. Malik looked out the window as the skyline slid past. Just a week ago he was celebrating a new tech contract, dreaming of beach vacations and bonuses. Now he was being asked to take on a surveillance giant from the inside. But deep in his chest, something settled, a fire that wouldn't let him walk away. "All right," he said finally. "I'll do it." The next week, Malik entered SafeCheck Solutions' downtown office as their newest junior engineer. On paper he was just another rising coder. But behind the scenes he was wired with encrypted devices, given access codes from Richard's legal team, and tasked with one mission: get inside and find the algorithmic blueprint that was doing the damage. For the first few days he played the part, quiet, observant, careful to blend in with the mostly white team of developers and analysts who barely glanced at him except to comment on his hoodie or ask where he was really from. But Malik was patient. At night he cloned security servers. He reviewed camera logs. He traced every alert flag back to its source. And soon he discovered something worse than he'd imagined. The system wasn't just biased, it was trained to be. Deep inside SafeCheck's database was a restricted folder called Project Basilisk. It was supposed to be a legacy model no longer in use. But inside were hundreds of images, black faces cropped from store footage, tagged with labels like unusual gait, furtive glance, loiter risk. Malik's heart pounded. These weren't suspects. They were customers. Kids. Grandmothers. Men like him. Worse still, many of the images had notes like, "Do not alert publicly, track silently." Malik downloaded everything. But just as he was about to close out of the server, a shadow passed behind him. He snapped his laptop shut and turned. A man stood at the door, tall, square jaw, navy suit, white skin, and eyes that had already seen too much. "Burning the midnight oil?" he asked with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're Malik Johnson, right? New guy." Malik nodded slowly. "Yeah. Just finishing up some onboarding projects." The man stepped inside, the door closing behind him with a hiss. "I'm Carson Vale, Chief Security Officer. I heard you were sharp." Malik forced a smile. "Just trying to learn fast." Carson studied him for a long moment, then said casually, "You know, we flagged you once. At a client store. Mistake, of course. But I always remember a face." Malik's blood turned to ice. "I'm surprised you stuck with us, given the incident." "Water under the bridge," Malik lied. Carson smirked. "Good. Because we value loyalty. And we keep close eyes on patterns. Speaking of which, your login history shows some unusual access routes. You wouldn't happen to be snooping around, would you?" Malik froze. "Just familiarizing myself with legacy code." Carson's eyes narrowed. "Well, don't dig too deep. Some routes go straight through concrete." He turned and left. Malik sat frozen for a moment, then reached for his phone. He had to warn Richard. But the screen blinked. No signal. Not jammed, cut. Then his laptop rebooted itself, and the desktop flashed a message across the screen: "We know what you took. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths." Malik didn't breathe for several seconds as the screen blazed with the words, "We know what you took." His fingers hovering over the keys like touching them might set off an alarm, his heart galloping in his chest as he scanned the office, suddenly hyper-aware of every camera, every motion detector, every strategically placed vent where a microphone could hide, and every second that passed felt like a brick pressing down on his lungs. But he knew panic wouldn't help now, so he slipped into the same mental calm he'd trained for in high-pressure code audits back at Yale and typed a single command: suffixit.exe, a backdoor script he had quietly embedded on his second day, designed to purge temp data, clear cookies, mask network fingerprints, and spoof his final actions with an auto-logout loop. He couldn't erase what he downloaded, but he could buy himself a few minutes of confusion in their surveillance logs, maybe enough to get out the building before someone made him disappear into a quiet back hallway that never made the news. Grabbing his messenger bag, he powered down his laptop and moved swiftly, keeping his shoulders relaxed even as the cameras tracked him from above, the guards at the lobby desk barely glancing up as he swiped his badge and forced a chuckle for the receptionist who commented on his late nights. His breath caught halfway between his throat and lungs until he hit the street and felt the night air on his face, but it didn't cool him. It burned, thick with adrenaline and questions. He couldn't go home, Not to his apartment, not to his cousin's place where he'd been crashing since quitting his last contract. So he pinged Richard through the emergency proton mail drop, using a coded phrase they'd agreed on: battery low. Temp rising. System error, 437. Richard's reply was almost instant. Dock 5, Pier 26. 11 p.m. Leave your phone behind. Malik stripped the SIM and battery, crushed the phone under his heel near a storm drain, and hopped on a city bike under a different name, every light, every shadow now a potential threat. By the time he reached the pier, Richard was already there, leaning against an old fishing boat, dressed in a black hoodie with the hood drawn tight, the lines in his face etched deeper than ever. "You were right," Malik said before he even reached him. "They're using facial markers. Legacy footage. I saw their Project Basilisk archive. Carson Vale caught me before I could scrub it all. He knows something." Richard's expression didn't change. "Did you get the data?" Malik nodded, pulled out a slim USB stick he'd hidden in a stitched seam inside his belt. "Encrypted, double firewalled, 512 AES. But I didn't get everything. I think there's more, maybe something worse." Richard looked at the stick, then at Malik. "You just crossed into territory you can't uncross, Malik. These people don't just fire you. They erase you." "So what now?" Malik asked. Richard hesitated. "We build a case, leak enough to make them sweat, push the public to demand answers, but we need one more piece, the training model they used to build the surveillance AI. Without that, they'll claim it's just a glitch. Anomaly. PR mistake." Malik clenched his jaw. "Then I go back in." "You won't last a day," Richard said. "Not after tonight. Then I won't go in as me." Malik's plan was insane, but it was the only way. He knew that SafeCheck had a secondary research facility in Oakland, a more isolated lab working on future surveillance integration for private prisons and municipal police, and based on internal memos Richard had intercepted, the data there was less protected, more experimental, and Malik knew if he could get inside as a consultant, under a new alias with a false background, he might get access to the model's root code, the raw skeleton of the machine that was labeling innocent people as threats. With help from Richard's old contacts in the digital identity underground, Malik transformed overnight. New look, new clothes, new credentials forged to match a fictional data scientist named Kevin Doyle from Denver, Colorado, recently laid off from a failed tech firm but with just enough skill to be plausible. By the following Monday, Kevin was interviewed virtually by a junior HR rep from SafeCheck Research, and 48 hours later, he was flown to the Oakland facility under the pretense of conducting a week-long performance audit of their system models. Malik kept his head down, spoke with a Midwestern accent, wore glasses and slightly altered his posture. He was paranoid, yes, but SafeCheck's paranoia would always be stronger, and sure enough, the first day passed without incident. The facility was more stripped down than corporate. Lots of exposed metal, harsh white lights, and a strange mix of scientists and ex-military types walking the halls, a subtle tension in the air as if no one fully trusted anyone else. It was there that Malik met her. Dr. Eliza Morrow, lead AI researcher, mid-30s, sharp as broken glass and twice as dangerous, with cropped silver blonde hair and eyes that flicked across you like a scanner. She didn't like consultants, especially not Kevin. "You ever build a classifier from scratch?" she asked coldly during a lunch break. "Or are you just here to babysit the real engineers?" Malik smiled tightly. "I built a retinal predictive net for real-time motion capture when I was 21. I can keep up." She stared a second longer, then turned away. But Malik noted the file she left open on her tablet. Sentinel Model V2, Behavior Tagging Enhancements. That was the model. That was what he needed. And somehow he had to access her terminal, except she never left it unattended, not even during bathroom breaks, and the codebase was protected by dual-key biometric locks that required both thumbprint and vocal recognition. That night, Malik broke into her office. He'd lifted her fingerprint from a glass of water she left behind and cloned it using a 3D printer rigged up in a nearby tech repair kiosk. He spliced the audio from a voice memo she recorded earlier, edited to mimic her login phrase, and snuck into the lab at 2:43 a.m., risking everything for a 2-minute download window. The files he pulled were devastating. Thousands of lines of machine learning code trained on illegal image sets from police body cams, public housing security footage, and facial data scraped from social media without consent. But the most explosive folder was titled, external integration, partner beta, and what he found made his stomach churn. SafeCheck wasn't working alone. They had partnered with a secret division of Homeland Security, testing the tech for real-time border monitoring, protest surveillance, and even drone-assisted crowd behavior analysis. And in the corner of one video file, a freeze frame taken during a test run, was the unmistakable face of someone Malik knew well. It was his younger sister, Kenya. She'd gone missing at a protest 2 years earlier. They'd said she ran off, joined a commune. No confirmed sightings. No confirmed anything. But here she was, face-tagged, labeled, anomaly, detained silently. Malik dropped the drive, staggered back, bow rising in his throat as the walls of the lab seemed to close in. Kenya hadn't run. She'd been flagged, tracked, possibly captured. And now, Malik realized so had he. Because the terminal suddenly blinked, and an overhead voice boomed through the facility. Breach detected. Isolation protocol engaged. Lockdown in 60 seconds. Malik ran for the exit, alarms howling behind him, but as he reached the hallway 4 black-clad guards rounded the corner, tasers drawn, no warnings given, just a flash of voltage in the air. Malik turned to sprint down the side corridor, only to run straight into someone's chest. A hand caught his shoulder. He looked up, stunned. It was Dr. Eliza Morrow. She stared at him with no surprise, then whispered, "You weren't the only one undercover. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths." Malik froze as Dr. Eliza Morrow's hand gripped his shoulder, not with force but precision, like someone trained in control. Her voice was a razor's whisper, "You weren't the only one undercover." And before he could utter a single word, she shoved him, hard, through an unmarked door just behind her, slamming it shut, punching in a code on a digital pad with fingers that moved too fast for a civilian scientist. And within seconds the hallway alarms muffled, the walls thick with soundproof insulation. Malik stumbled back, clutching the hard drive he'd nearly dropped again, breath ragged. "What are you talking about?" he hissed. "Who are you?" Eliza removed her ID badge and flipped it over. Beneath the SafeCheck logo was a second chip, barely noticeable, and when she scanned it at a hidden panel near the door, the wall shimmered for a second. Then slid open to reveal a small, sterile room lit in blue LED glow, maps pinned on the walls, photos, diagrams, surveillance images of government convoys, politicians, corporate boardrooms, and in the center of it all, a black and white photo of Kenya. "I've been working this op for 3 years, Eliza said calmly. "I was embedded to trace the government corporate nexus testing facial recognition tech on Black communities under the guise of public safety. I thought I had time. I didn't know they'd already taken someone connected to you." Malik's mouth dried. "Kenya. She's in one of their files. Flagged. Labeled for detainment." Eliza nodded grimly. "She's alive. For now. But not free. She's in what they call a Phase 2 processing site, one of several facilities being run off-grid through private funding and government silence." Malik couldn't believe what he was hearing, though deep down, every puzzle piece now fit. "Where?" he demanded. "Utah," Eliza said, crossing to a map and pointing at a patch of desert land marked only by a red pin. "A black site 20 miles off any main road. They've converted a decommissioned mine into a biometric research prison. Kenya's file indicates she's been there nearly 20 months, used as a behavioral anchor in their predictive threat modeling." "So what now?" Malik said, rage flaring beneath his ribs. "We expose them? Go public?" Eliza shook her head. "Not yet. We need everything: downloaded system models, detainee logs, neural sync test results. If we leak what you've got now, they'll discredit it, call it fake AI code. We need the full set, and we need Kenya out before they wipe the Phase 2 population for security calibration." "Security calibration?" Malik asked, sick to his stomach. Eliza's jaw tightened. "That means mass deletion. And that means time's up." Within hours, they were on the move, hacking the system from inside the lab to create an exit tunnel through the building's service sublevels. Eliza handed Malik a burner phone, encrypted with a private comms app that could self-destruct the moment it was compromised. "We've got about 6 hours before they triangulate this breach. Maybe less." Malik followed her through the dim underground corridors, crawling past server hubs, security gates, and shadowy rooms where data wasn't just stored, It was tested on real humans, simulated live on massive monitors tracking faces, expressions and responses in what looked like living quarters. Faces he didn't recognize. Faces that might never be seen again. Once outside, they headed straight to Richard's safe house on the outskirts of Oakland. The moment he opened the door and saw Eliza, Richard's jaw dropped. "You brought her?" "She's with Safe Check." "She was embedded," Malik snapped. "She saved my life." "Or she's manipulating it," Richard growled. "You trust her?" "I have to," Malik said, leveling his voice. "She's the only one who knows where Kenya is." Richard relented reluctantly, and for the next 48 hours the three of them worked non-stop. Eliza decrypted layers of the neural net Malik had stolen, revealing that the AI was not just trained to identify suspicious behavior, it was designed to predict resistance movements and pre-authorize physical interventions through preemptive digital warrants, often before any actual crime occurred. It was Minority Report, built in real time, and operating in poor, underrepresented and mostly black and brown neighborhoods across America. The real purpose? Surveillance-enabled gentrification. Real estate data was embedded into the threat models, predicting where to push families out and boost corporate housing development. "This isn't just racism," Malik muttered. "It's capitalism with a facial recognition mask." But all the information still pointed to one thing: Kenya. "She's the proof and the key," Eliza said. "We extract her, we have a living witness, DNA verified and time-stamped, that they can't deny." "Then let's get her," Malik said. Richard shook his head. "It's not that simple. You're not getting into a federal black site with a fake ID and a hope." Eliza didn't blink. "We're not going in through the front. We're going in through the drone gate." Malik's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "Once a week, a supply drone flies in from a hidden base camp 5 miles outside the site. Cargo only. No guards. Just signal relay. If we hijack that drone, swap the payload, we can ride it straight into the core loading bay." "That's suicide," Richard snapped. "That's the only way," Malik replied. The plan was set. They tracked the drone's scheduled route using a hacked FAA feed and set up an intercept point along its signal range. Richard working the EMP jammer, Eliza building a decoy cargo crate, and Malik prepping the extraction gear. By the next sunrise, Malik was crammed inside the drone's steel shell, breathing through a small oxygen tank, heartbeat pounding as the drone launched silently into the sky. 15 minutes later, the drone dipped into the restricted airspace and began its descent. The crate thudded onto a metallic platform. Robotic arms extended, lifting it into the dim, echoing delivery bay. Malik waited, counted the seconds, then triggered the latch. He tumbled out, rifle raised, crouching behind the crate. He was in. The black site smelled of ozone and recycled air. Surveillance bots zipped across the ceiling. But Malik moved like a ghost, just as he had trained, passing through blind spots, evading sensors until he reached the detention wing. It was worse than he imagined. People locked in glass cubes, some awake, some slumped, barely moving. And then he saw her. Kenya. Hair shaved, eyes dull, wrapped in a pale gray uniform, but it was her. Alive. He moved to the keypad. Entered the master override Eliza had decoded. The glass door opened with a hiss. Kenya didn't flinch. "Kenya," he whispered. Her eyes focused slowly. "Malik. I'm here. I'm getting you out." She blinked like it was a dream. "You came." "Of course I did." But just as he reached to help her up, red lights erupted across the ceiling. Sirens screamed. And a voice crackled from the intercom, cold, amused, and all too familiar. "Welcome back, Malik. You really thought we hadn't planned for this?" It was Carson Vale, SafeCheck's director. And his voice was followed by the loud, echoing click of an automatic door unlocking behind him. Malik turned slowly. And standing in the doorway, rifle in hand, expression unreadable, was Eliza. "Put the drive down, Malik," she said softly. "You weren't the only one lied to. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift black voices and expose hidden truths." Malik froze. The moment Eliza stepped into the cell block, weapon raised, face devoid of emotion, he felt time shatter. His mind ran in every direction. Was this betrayal? A bluff? An act? But her eyes, they weren't cold. They were conflicted. "Eliza," he said carefully, stepping between her and Kenya, "don't do this." You don't understand, she said, voice trembling. I have to do this. They have my sister. She disappeared in Detroit 2 years ago. Same pattern. Same ghost site. Carson found out I was helping you. He gave me one choice, hand you over and Kenya walks, or lose both of them. Malik's hands were steady now. So that's it? You're giving them what they want. Eliza's gun faltered just slightly. Kenya coughed weakly behind him, whispering, she's lying? What? She's not working with them because of her sister. She's always been one of them. Kenya's voice cracked, but her eyes burned with something fierce and unbreakable. I heard her. In the walls. She's their field architect. She designed the mental conditioning chambers. The white rooms. Malik turned back to Eliza. Is that true? Eliza didn't deny it. I believed it would make the world safer, she said. I thought if we could predict danger we could prevent death. I didn't realize they'd use it to erase people instead of protect them. I tried to get out. But they own everything, my research, my name, my life. No, Eliza, Malik said, stepping forward. You let them own it. And now it ends. He threw a flash drive toward her, hard and fast. She flinched, catching it by reflex, and that split-second distraction was enough. Malik lunged forward, grabbing her arm, twisting the weapon away. The gun clattered. Kenya screamed. Eliza staggered back, and behind her the massive detention door slid open again. Carson Vale entered. Flanked by 2 armed guards and a woman Malik never expected to see again. His mother. Bound. Bruised. But alive. No more games, Carson said smoothly, clapping his hands once. Malik Thompson, born in Brooklyn, reclassified as a high-threat anomaly due to your predictive patterns. You were never meant to make it past your 21st birthday. But then, something went wrong. You resisted the model. That fascinated us. Malik's fists clenched. You locked up Kenya to punish me. No, Carson said, smiling. We tested Kenya to watch you. She was our behavioral anchor. And you passed every threshold. Rage. Compassion. Rebellion. Loyalty. You were perfect. And now? Malik asked. Carson turned to the guards. Terminate him. Retrieve the drive. Wipe the detainees. Suddenly, gunfire. But not from the guards. From behind them. Richard stormed in through the security door, flanked by 3 masked figures, activists from Malik's old network, the same people SafeCheck failed to track because they used analog systems to communicate. EMPs exploded through the hallway, frying sensors and turret lines. Chaos erupted. Malik Dove grabbed Kenya, lifted her up as Richard tossed him a sidearm. They moved fast, gunfire echoing, guards dropping, alarms wailing. Eliza staggered to her feet, dazed. Go, she whispered. I'll cover the exit. Malik paused, only for a breath. Why? Because I was wrong. She turned, firing at the oncoming squad. And then Malik, Kenya, Richard, and the team burst into the tunnel, an old ventilation shaft Carson once used to smuggle contraband data out. They climbed, ran, crawled, escaped. By dawn, they were in the desert, running toward a black SUV Richard had pre-staged with remote keys. They drove hard, across the state line, reaching a safe house in Colorado by nightfall. And by then the internet had already exploded. Richard leaked the full database. Detainee names, biometric test logs, behavioral codes, and facial recognition blueprints tied to private real estate developers. Major news outlets tried to suppress it, but it was too late. Black Twitter caught it first. Then ProPublica. Then a class action suit from 6 states. Politicians began scrambling, SafeCheck board members resigned, and Carson Vale was arrested at an airstrip in Nevada trying to flee. Eliza Morrow turned herself in. She testified to everything. But Kenya disappeared from public view. She never gave a single interview. She refused documentaries, book deals, podcasts. When a journalist found her in rural Vermont months later and asked why, she said, because some wounds aren't for cameras. They're for healing. Quietly. Malik, on the other hand, began speaking, everywhere. Not about himself but about the forgotten. The targeted. The invisible. He launched the Invisible Project, a platform that tracked surveillance abuse, gentrification patterns, and the wrongful use of AI on communities of color. His first keynote address began with the words, "They accused me of theft. But what they stole was dignity, and we're taking it back. As for the store owner, the old man who once ran out and hugged Malik when the world turned on him, his name was Ezekiel. He passed away peacefully a year later. But his family renamed the shop, Zeke's Hope. And on the front window, etched in gold, were the words, "Believe in the ones they dismiss." In a world that too often labels, monitors, and controls the vulnerable, resistance is not just about survival. It's about reclaiming identity, truth, and dignity. Sometimes, the ones they accuse are the ones meant to expose the system. And sometimes, the most powerful act of justice is simply not backing down. The end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths.